If you're receiving this transmission, this is Black Spire Broadcast.
All right, everybody, and welcome to Black Spire Broadcast, the voice of the rebellion. It is so good to have everybody with us. Welcome back. It has been about a week since our last session behind the mic, and it's good to be back. This is a happy place. We're just a forewarning for anybody that's listening to this, and it's got a little bit of connectivity issues. There's a massive thunderstorm finding its way through Florida right now, so just a forewarning there, but tonight's episode is a fun one. It's a fellow I've wanted to talk to for a while, a gentleman that I really like. I really like what he has to offer. He has a really unique take on collecting and presents things that you don't really see too often. You know, there's a lot of collections out there that are very similar, but some things are kind of hosh-poshed together, and I don't mean that in a bad way at all, and we'll get into that a little further, but I have Mr. Jonathan from the one and only Star Wars Collected. So welcome in, Jonathan.
Hi, thanks for having me, man. I'm happy to be
here.
Dude,
of course. It is an honor. I'm sorry we had some technical difficulties behind the scenes, but that's okay because none of you fine folks
we weren't going to tell anybody about that. We're two AV professionals here. We always get it right every single time. Don't listen to him, everybody.
Absolutely.
He's making things up.
Oh, it's a lie. It's a lie. Well, welcome, my friend. We've been trying to get together for a little bit, and thankfully it worked out. So I'm glad to have you here.
Yeah, this is fun.
Good. Well, first off, congratulations on your YouTube channel. It is clearly a smash hit, and it is going well. I'm glad to see that is going so well for you.
Yeah, no, it's been, I started it, I don't even know now, a couple years ago now, and it was basically like, I'm the only person I know who's really into Star Wars, and I'm the only person I know who's really into collecting Star Wars at a local level, and, I just wanted to connect with other people. I was getting all these cool things, and, the people in my life are nice enough to sort of like nod along, but they don't get like how cool some of this stuff is, so kind of my goal was to share my collection with other people. I was watching a lot of other YouTubers and Star Wars people out there and always enjoying their content. And I have an AV background. Not that you would know it to look at like how sloppy a lot of my content is. But I thought, why not give it a try? And it's been amazing. It's been much more, I've gotten much more out of it than I ever thought that I would.
That's so cool. And it's fun to take that, those professional skills and apply them to things that kind of are a hobby for us, and that's so cool.
Yeah. And for a while, it's, if you do something at work all day, a lot of times you don't want to come home and do that. And, and that's always kind of the downside of turning your passion into your career, is that it can kind of ruin the passion sometime.
Right.
But this has been a way that, as long as I can come in and make stuff fairly quickly, it doesn't become a huge burden in my life, doesn't keep me from doing anything else. It allows me to connect with people once or twice a week. And then, I'm trying to be as active as I can on Instagram. And I've, met a lot of people just through that we have nearly daily conversations back and forth, which I just wouldn't have that community without having done the YouTube channel.
Right, man, and I couldn't agree more because that's the very foundation of Black Spire Broadcast. I thought it was just going to be me and a mic talking about stuff, and maybe I'd have like two people listen to it that are as weird about this as I am, and it turns out there's a lot more people that are interested in the kind of stuff that we do, and it's so cool. You meet people that way,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Star Wars Celebration, I've gone to the last three. So I went to Chicago, Anaheim, and then London. Planning to go to Tokyo. I went to Japan in 2019, and it was like one of my favorite trips ever. So I highly recommend anyone out there who's like, oh, I don't know about Japan. It's amazing. It'll blow your mind. But anyway, first Celebration was a lot of fun. I went with my wife and went with a really good friend of ours who is also really into Star Wars. So that was fun to share that experience with them. But then the last two I've gone solo. It just hasn't worked out in everyone else's schedule, and everyone else isn't crazy enough to spend 4 or 5 days at a conference purely about Star Wars. So but like last year I'm walking around and a couple people are like, hey, you're the guy from YouTube, or hey, I watch your channel. I'm like, holy crap.
What?
Like how I'm like, no, like I stand out a little bit. I'm a really tall guy, but you don't necessarily see that on camera.
Sure.
But I was shocked that like people recognized me at all and people wanted to take photos with me. And I was like, what is going on? So that was like a really cool kind of like turning point in the channel where I could really like get that. I could feel that community coming back to me. And then this last time in London, which again I expected, it's across the pond. I don't know if it's necessarily my demographic necessarily, but thanks to the internet, borders don't really matter a whole lot. And I was just amazed. I met 50, 60 people or something like that had watched one of my videos or multiple of my videos, subscribed to the channel, and that my video about kind of celebration, the end piece that I kind of left with that was like, I always kind of wanted to be, somehow part of Star Wars. I think kind of all of us were like, wouldn't it be fun to be even a PA on a film and see your name on a credit or something like that. And, it's not really part of my actual career aspirations at this point, but it was fun because we're at Star Wars Celebration. Everyone's enjoying Star Wars, loving all the announcements, all that stuff. And then people are maybe not as excited, but people are also excited to see me. And it's like, for them, I'm like part of how they enjoy and consume Star Wars now. Yeah. And that blew my mind, changed my whole perspective on, what we're doing and what I'm doing. And it meant the world to me. So it's constantly being humbled by the generosity of other people's character online.
Right. And it's crazy because you kind of mold yourself and become, like you said, a medium through which people kind of ingest Star Wars, and you're almost associated with the brand itself, which is wild, because I could never have imagined myself or any of my friends that I've met to be looked at in that way. It's like, no, I'm just a weirdo and nerd that really likes this, that have nothing better to do. So
sure, but I think at least for me, whenever I see a certain movie or certain genre of movie, or I'm looking to build something or something like that, there's certain channels on YouTube that I go to kind of consume that material. As soon as I come out of a movie, I go and see if Chris Stuckman has done a review of it. He does reviews online, or I see what Screen Rant has to say about it or something like that. And that's just part of how I consume media now, is I associate it with a couple different YouTube channels depending on what it is. And it feels amazing that there's a handful of people out there who do the same thing for my channel.
Hey brother, I would say that the 3,800 subscribers you have is more than a handful, so you were doing something right.
That's very nice of you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's cool.
They're doing something right, I think. I mean, it's just a really great community. It's very positive. I'm a fairly optimistic person in real life, although I'm also really into politics and things like that. So there's plenty of cynicism and things like that in my day-to-day consumption. But I just can't bring myself to be upset and cynical about Star Wars. It is something that is eternally positive for me.
That is so good, and I wish that more people, and I'm often guilty of it myself, had that opinion and had that not opinion, but the ability to feel that true. I feel that love, but I can get angry with things, or I can get upset with something, and I can't necessarily see it from an outside perspective unless somebody really convinces me. I want to debate everyone on Star Wars, but that's the fun in it sometimes, and it's like nerds talking nerd stuff, you know what I mean? Unless you're one of us, you can't have that conversation, But I love it, and that's what's so cool about it. It does bring a lot of joy and adds serious value to my life, having a chance to create various Star Wars content.
Yeah, I mean, it's my background was in filmmaking, so when I watch a movie, man, I'm super what's the right word, critical about it. I'm watching everything. I'm watching how it's put together, how it's structured, how it's shot. Editing's kind of my forte, so all the continuity errors with glasses and things moving around and things like that. But when it comes to Star Wars, it just kind of turns off. I mean, basically I just come down to a point where it's I really like that. That wasn't as much for me, but I'm always I always go into everything wanting to like it, wanting to love it, and if it doesn't connect, then it's it's still part of the canon, and I don't have to necessarily revisit that all the time. You just pick out the parts that you like and go from there. So basically, it's a long way of saying that in real life I can be a total a-hole too, but when it comes to Star Wars, I just try to keep it upbeat and find that's where I get the most out of it.
Every group needs that person though that can do that. You know what I mean? Because there's plenty of me out there. There's plenty of critics, that are highly critical, and it's good. Now you're going to be that voice of reason for me the next time, when Ahsoka comes out, and hopefully it's as good as I want it to be. Yeah, right. And if it's not, I'm going to go to you and be like, hey, I need you to brighten my day.
Well, hopefully Ahsoka will do it. I have my reservations. Dave Filoni, I love Dave, and he's grown a lot. but I will say that I tend to think that the episodes he directs tend to be some of the weaker ones in the series.
Interesting.
Especially I think that was pretty evident for me in the first season of Mandalorian, and it got a little bit better. So he's continuing to grow, and I think he's a great guy. I think he's like sort of an eternal student, and he's progressing. So I'm just hoping that Ahsoka is a place where he's really sharpened his writing skills, because I don't think he's directing all of it, right?
He's written every episode. I know that.
Yeah,
so that's the first thing he's written every episode. I don't think he's directing all of it now.
Right.
I think it's split up like 3 directors or something.
So I have that's a good step, to write the entire series. So then hopefully when he's ready for Heir to the Empire, if that ends up being the name, which I think is a fantastic
that's the
name.
rumor.
Yeah,
that's the rumor.
Then hopefully he's ready to go. But I think he's got a great team behind him, and I think the fans, of course, are almost always right behind him. Depends on the week.
Yeah, they are. I mean, no, it's true, but he hasn't done a lot lately. Lately, being the past few years, that people are like, what. It hasn't happened. So,
yeah.
But I will save that conversation for the end. I want to talk about Jonathan the Collector. But my friend, man, that's awesome. We've already done 11 minutes of just Star Wars. That's what's so cool about this. Welcome to a Star Wars podcast. Where all we do is talk about Star Wars.
Right.
But this guy's our guest. We got to talk about him. But, buddy, what got you started into collecting? What got you interested?
Oh man! Well, let's first start with what got me into Star Wars. How about
Oh yes,
okay.
A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it was always kind of like so. I was born in 87, so late 80s.
Okay.
So it was around, but it was not in the the heyday yet. It wasn't Power of the Force or anything like that. Hadn't come back out yet, and I had I was aware of it. I'd probably seen it a couple times at that point. My parents buy me like the Death Star Micro Machines set for Christmas one year.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like my first there's a toy. And I was always really into toys. I always had like a lot of toys. So that kind of pivoted me to that. And at some point someone gave me this book, and I forget what the title of it is, but the cover of it is burned into my mind. And when I describe it, most people will know what it is. It is a book about Lucasfilm. And the cover, I think, is red and black. Red on top, black on the bottom, or vice versa. And there is Indiana Jones' whip is on the front of it, along with a couple other things. So someone gave me this book. I think it was my aunt. And basically it went through like props and how they made Star Wars. And Star Wars was the first film that I figured out that someone made it. Before that, it was just this magical black rectangle that people put into a VCR, and the movie came out. I didn't really think too much about it. So that was the first time that I figured out that someone actually made the movie, and not just someone, that a lot of people made the movie, and that was a job that you could do professionally. All these different things: make the movie, make the props, all these things that some of the things I see on screen are giant full size, and some of the things that look like they're giant full size are actually only yay tall, and they're little puppets, and they get moved and all that stuff. So Star Wars in a lot of ways kind of introduced me to filmmaking as a overall genre, or as an overall interest. So then I became really into movies. In high school, I got the opportunity to run like a cable-based news channel at our high school. Fully embraced that. The last 2 years of my high school career, all I was doing was that. I barely went to any other classes. Went to film school, all that stuff. And at the whole time, Star Wars was just part of my life. It wasn't my obsession, but it was always there, always referencing it. I was always the one who knew the most about it, had watched the films the most, all that stuff, and was lucky enough to grow up in that 90s period when the new toys were coming out, and then we got the re-releases and we got the prequels and all that stuff. So then I think it was 2015, I just bought a house, and I'd moved out of like an apartment type thing. And I thought it might be cool to have a Stormtrooper helmet. And then a few years later, here we are.
That's what starts, man.
Yeah, so the first thing I bought, I think, was the Incinerator Stormtrooper helmet from EFX.
Yeah.
And then I think I picked up like a Gentle Giant clone statue, and then sideshows like Boba Fett prototype thing. I just started looking at eBay and kind of like picking off things that were like relatively inexpensive that I thought were kind of cool. And I kind of still do that today. So when you did my intro, you'll see that my collection is a mix of things. My rule for collecting is collect what you love, collect what makes you happy.
That's awesome.
There's a lot of people who are very, and this is not a knock against them, but they're very rigid about, like, they only collect things with a lineage. They only collect one-to-one scale stuff. They only collect Hot Toys. They only collect this era. They only collect that era. Whatever.
Hey.
So I collect things that make me happy, and sometimes that means that there you go.
We're meant to be.
So sometimes that means it's a real expensive thing. Like the thing I released on my channel today was MYC's ATST statue. One of the more expensive things I've ever bought from my collection. So sometimes it's that. Sometimes it is a Hasbro ship that I took the time to repaint, and it cost me $10 because I bought it off of eBay and stuck it on a stand, and it's, at least for now, my temporary representation of that thing in my collection. I do a lot of the lens that I kind of look through things for is representation. So, is this represented in my collection? Do I need 17 Boba Fett's? No, but if I'm sort of thinking, like, is he fairly represented in my collection? Yes or no?
But do I want 17 Boba Fett's? Yes.
It depends on the Boba Fett, right?
It does. It does.
Right. So so it's just sort of a mix of things, and the pictures we're looking at right now is from my old house, my old collection gallery, and it was certainly sort of something that you kind of set it up, and then it kind of grows. So you kind of like add a couple more shelves, and then it kind of grows, and then you kind of move this over here. And what I'm looking to do in the space I'm in now is, after I finish off all the other home things that are on my list, which will be here shortly, is to really renovate this large space that I have at the bottom of my house into kind of my ultimate gallery space, with custom built shelving behind glass and proper lighting, and have a kind of a permanent filming studio to make it easier for me to create content and all that stuff. So we're moving into an exciting time, I think, on my channel with the immersion of all that stuff.
That's really awesome, man. That is awesome. And so this is your old house that we're looking at right now.
This is my old house. Yep.
This is a fantastic setup. Nevertheless, this was a basement, I assume, but you had a lot of room.
Yeah, it was decent size down there. It was partially finished. You can still see there's cinder blocks in the back, but I took the time to put some carpet tiles down and all that stuff and make it a little more homey. It shared some space with a home gym and a giant air conditioning unit that was placed right in the middle of the house. So it wasn't the best spacing, but even this shelf right here, you see an expensive sideshow piece, and if you go a couple shelves up, there's some like Jack's Pacific type things, which are like those 2 foot tall shore troopers and stuff like that. So it's a real mix of things.
Right.
I'm hoping to get this stuff in the next phase here a little bit.
But this
more protected.
This adds an aesthetic. I kind of like the cement block back there.
Right.
That's an aesthetic. But dude, you have a fantastic collection. I mean, Rancors are my absolute hands down favorite thing.
Way. Okay.
Oh yeah, I love the Rancor, man.
Yeah.
That's my go-to. I just recently got into art and drawing, and that was the first thing I drew was a Rancor. So it's my favorite thing. Is this the sideshow one?
This is the sideshow one. This is the big boy. The one that's like, they won't say that it's 1/6 scale, but it's pretty close to 1/6 scale.
Wow. Which is wild. I can only imagine how big that is in person.
Yeah, he's a big boy. He maybe not the most accurate Rancor when you kind of go back to the actual puppet, especially if you look back to like Regal Robots' version of it. However, I think a lot of us kind of picture the Rancor kind of looking this way. Which kind of sparks the debate in the collecting community about idealization versus screen accuracy versus the hero version. If I could pass anything on, I would say screen accuracy is basically a farce, that you'll be chasing a leprechaun for a very long time, because most props, there's multiple versions of them and they're all slightly different.
It's true. And now let me ask you, what is your stance on this term that gets thrown around a lot, lineage? Does it matter to you, or does it not, or does it depend on the piece? Right.
It doesn't matter to me as far as, that piece is no good because it doesn't have lineage. I don't think it's necessarily a knock against another piece if it doesn't have the lineage. If it does, I can definitely see the appeal of that. Am I willing to pay twice as much because it came out of a mold that 50 years ago something else came out of a mold of? Not particularly, not for me. I don't think it's going to like spark that much more joy in me, and that's kind of the base of my collection anyway. That helmet right there was the first one that I actually made. I had a goal to make this helmet before The Force Awakens came out, and I met that goal. But so I bought the cast online, but then had to do all the finishing and the painting and the masking and dremeling out and all that stuff. Which then since then I've done dozens and dozens and dozens. So that piece always kind of holds a special place for me.
And it's beautiful. It's well done, and I'm assuming all you had to go off of was what had been released prior to the movie coming out.
Not a lot, yeah, not a lot to go off of. Yeah.
Well, you did a fantastic job. That looks beautiful.
Thank you.
And I hold the same opinion when it comes to lineage. I guess it depends on the piece, and I don't even have an example off the top of my head because I don't own anything that does contain any lineage other than something I've made myself. But if I could just name a favorite character off the top of my head, and that depends on what day of the week it is, honestly.
Sure.
I may want one thing that's like, hey, look, that's cast from the original. That might be cool to have, but it would probably be just a one-off, like, hey, I bought this one thing, rather than having half my collection or all of my collection be of lineage.
Yeah. I mean, there's always the quantity versus quality debate. I'm not a Black Series collector when it comes to figures, partially because if I could just walk into a Target and flop down $20 or $30 now for a Black Series figure, I'd be constantly in Targets and I wouldn't have any money. Being able to, sometimes the fact that these things are a little bit more expensive makes you take that breath and make sure you're collecting something that is actually worthwhile. Something that I've been very guilty of many times is buying something because it was inexpensive. And sometimes that works out. Sometimes it's great. And sometimes you just end up with something you're just like, not the best.
I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah. So I can understand the appeal of a lineage piece. The idea of owning a screen used prop, of course, is so appealing yet so unattainable to nearly every collector's. Especially in this day and age, maybe during some of the dark periods, some of the dips in fandom, that was a little bit more of a possibility. But you look at stuff that is it the prop store that puts up, or the prop shop?
From the UK, prop store. Just the smallest of things will cost thousands and thousands of dollars. So I agree.
That's not a dream that's obtainable, but if kind of getting you partway there by getting the example I can think of is there's a guy who does TIE Pilot helmets that are cast from original TIE Pilot helmet molds or based off of one. If that does it for you, that's great. If that's what brings you joy, if that makes you feel closer to Star Wars, if that makes that piece feel more significant for you, totally get it.
Right. No, I totally agree. And I think everybody probably has that movie or series or that character that they're like, man, if I had it, I would do an infinite amount of money to get that thing of that person,
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of stopped here, because Solo, which is a very underrated movie in my opinion, is arguably one of my favorite Star Wars films, and I love what you did here. I don't have that Crimson Dawn Hot Toy Mall. I have the Season 7 Clone Wars one right above me, but I almost got that one, except that the sculpt is identical, with the exception of the clothes being different in the legs. But I love that you have a Solo setup, because I have my own version of a Solo diorama over there. So
yeah. I mean, again, it's kind of representation for me. So I actually have also the Solo with him in the big fur coat that's still in a box here.
So that's the deluxe then, right?
Yeah, the deluxe version.
I have the base one without. He's part of my diorama, but that's cool.
So maybe when I set that guy up, maybe I'll convert this Han to feel just like a mud trooper or something like that, like put the goggles down or something like that. But it just comes down to representation. And Solo, I think again was a victim of bad timing and some bad vibes in the community at the time, and was a fine film. And I'm definitely definitely a supporter of Make Solo 2 happen in some form. Whether it is another, I don't necessarily need another film. I'd love a Disney Plus series. I'd love to see that Lando series finally go forward. I would have loved to have seen an expanded Crimson Dawn story played out in something other than the comics. So I don't know.
I wanted that so bad to be the big bad in the Book of Boba Fett. I wanted it to be Crimson Dawn. I wanted, I knew the Pikes were important, but I thought that they were answering to Crimson Dawn, and they were not, unfortunately. So
yeah, that could have been a cool link up. So I try not to ignore any part of Star Wars, even if I don't love it. So like again, in a box somewhere around here, I have the Book of Boba Fett throne with Boba Fett, and then I have Fennec Shan on order whenever Hot Toys decided to deliver that.
Their characters were fantastic. It just here's that critic in me. It just wasn't. It came out recognizable as Star Wars with characters I knew. It just the story wasn't there for me.
For me, it was structure mostly. It was oddly put together, especially for people that are very competent filmmakers. But typically a flashback is supposed to serve the story that's happening in the current day, where there's an issue in the current day. You use a flashback to sort of inform the audience as to why this person makes the decision that they do, or gets the inspiration that they do in the current timeline.
Right.
Book of Boba Fett just sort of was like, all right, this story in the current day, we're kind of done with it. Let's go to this flashback. And they were, kind of all interesting.
Sure. It just was, it was heavy on the flashbacks too. That didn't do any, it's like they were like, okay, nobody knows, everybody wants to know what happened to Boba. So let's just fill that in real quick. And we'll spend a few episodes doing that and primarily have that be what we do. And then all of a sudden we're in the present. Yeah. And it just felt like for who his character could have been, it was a small time story. Yeah, like lowly problems that I don't feel like he would have really had to deal with too much.
Yeah, and it's always important to show the audience your character's motivations. And I think all of us were a little unclear what his motivation was through most of the series. And then when we were sort of informed here and there, it just didn't quite seem significant enough or just in line with the character that we had, to a larger part, imagined Boba Fett being. Which is kind of expectations that are kind of on us. But so there, just like I was kind of saying earlier, there are parts of Book of Boba Fett that I think are fantastic, and I will hold on to those parts, and I will celebrate those parts, and I will collect those parts. So because I think the image of Boba Fett on the throne in Jabba's palace is a pretty damn cool, iconic image.
Absolutely, absolutely. And hey, it came pre-Book of Boba Fett. It was the end of season 2 Mando.
There you go.
But a movie that did exceed all expectations is absolutely Rogue One, and I love that you included it in your collection.
Rogue One is definitely a favorite.
Fantastic.
If I had to pick a lane, like I said, I kind of collect what I think is interesting and what moves me, and especially I'm a very design oriented person. So there's a lot of times it's just the design is something I really like. But if I had to pick one thing, it would be 1-to-1 scale type collectibles, whether that's I have over 100 helmets in my collection. I saw some of those images earlier, but then things like this, to me, that just makes it feel all the more real, as if that these are artifacts. Like I'm Grand Admiral Thrawn collecting artifacts in my office. It just makes it feel more real, and there's also something about it where I feel like I can create it. So this was part of a kit. There's a real Vietnam era helmet underneath that, and I did all the painting and all that stuff on there to kind of put it all together. But yeah, Rogue One is just is fantastic. I love
it. Was a fantastic film, and it came in, I think, with really minimal expectations, because it was the first thing that wasn't a feature film, and we get this film that at the time I was like, I'm not sure what is going on here. We have a Star Wars story. I thought the whole thing was a Star Wars story, but now okay, we'll try it, and instant hit, man.
And nearly all characters that people weren't familiar with, was this going to work? Was it not going to work? But I mean, the Death Trooper, I have a Death Trooper kit that maybe someday I'll come to build. It is a pretty ideal kit for me if I'm not going to be, Vader over here. Death Trooper is supposed to be over 6.5 feet tall, which I am.
That's you.
So so that would work. That would work pretty well for me. But out of one movie, you get Death Trooper design, fantastic. You get the Shore Trooper design, which everybody loves. You get the Tank Trooper, which is awesome. You get things like Two Tubes here.
Two Tubes is a classic, man.
The designs coming out of that movie alone, just fantastic. And you've seen how not only have they been popular in the fandom and what you can buy in collectibles, but they keep getting recycled and used in The Mandalorian and used in Rebels and things like that. So it just shows you how solid of a design that was. And of course, I love that when they bring something, something gets brand new introduced and you're like, why haven't I ever seen this before? And there's never really a great in canon answer. Of course, the real answer is it hadn't been made, but I do like it when they then take the time to sprinkle that through new content, and it makes it feel all the more real.
And you every once in a while you hit on designs, and I'm going to mention two tubes for our listeners that are not watching. He has a 1-to-1 scale. I guess I don't know if it's a half face, half helmet, half mask.
Bust,
depends on what he's made of. We'll call it bust.
I don't know.
Yeah. But it's fantastic, and this was one of the designs that hit me instantly in Rogue One that I'm thankful we got to see again in Andor.
Yeah.
Just such a killer design, and I know he has a brother. I don't remember his name, but just fantastic designs. Love them.
And the aliens are always kind of an odd thing. This piece particularly is 3D printed, and one of the few pieces that I've 3D printed that's actually like an organic. And I feel like that's, aliens are sort of an odd thing in Star Wars in that, when you think of something like A New Hope, it's hard to not think of that cantina scene as one of the first things you think of. In the more recent stuff, aliens haven't been quite as, at the front. There was a lot of complaints about Andor not having a lot of aliens in it. There were more, I think, if you really sat down and kind of looked at it. But I think people are really wanting an alien, maybe not lead character, but put another alien in a Chewbacca type character, where they are there throughout the film.
I think that's where The Mandalorian got a lot of things right. I mean, especially the pilot of season 1, we got a heavily involved alien episode that was front and center character, and it showed like, hey, we can do this with practical effects, and that was really cool. And they can obviously do it,
How good did the pirates look in Mando season 3?
They look fantastic. Even though I don't understand why he was there. But he looked fantastic.
Yeah, I was blown away when watching that first episode. I'm looking at it and I'm like, maybe they're CGI enhanced, which is fine. But I mean, they looked so real.
That's your realm of the world to understand. And if you think it looks fine, I think it looks fine. But I see your helmet collection here, man. This is nuts.
This is the wall of helmets, and that's not quite all of them, but what do I say, right? How do I apologize for this?
Dude,
it's
beautiful.
And like I said, it's grown even since this, and they're everywhere right now. There's a wet bar next to me, and it's all helmets right now, and there's a bunch on the ground all around me and all that stuff, and there's some over here, and the photos you were looking at right before that was my like shelf of shame, which are the things that I've started and haven't completed. Most of those are a little bit further down the line than what they are there, but I haven't touched anything in about a year since I moved, and my 3D printer hasn't been turned on and stuff like that. But how cool is it that we live in an era where you can basically make your own collectibles?
Dude, that is... I think about that all the time, and I haven't personally invested in 3D printer yet, and I will. After I had Aaron from Galactic Armory on, and he sold me on it, I just haven't spent the money. But man, I would love to just sit there and, because I'm dabbling in the arts, and I have ideas about room building to dioramas to helmets, and I just 3D printer makes all of that so much more realizable, if that's a word, and accessible.
Yeah, you mentioned Galactic Armory. Gonna give it like a double thumbs up endorsement for them. He's been I'm always kind of like talking him up a little bit. He and I message back and forth every once in a while here and there, but he has done a lot, I think, for the 3D printing Star Wars community. Doing a lot of videos about how to smooth these things out. That's always the downside of 3D printing, is just getting them to a point where you feel like they're ready for paint. The painting part is relatively easy, but want to give him double props because he's done a lot for the community. But
absolutely, man. And I'm going to take this second to plug him because he is a sponsor of the show. And if you use code BlackSpire at checkout on galacticarmory.net, you will save 10% off your next purchase. So if you're like Jonathan here and I that are crazy and like to build things, there you go. Both of us can't recommend him enough. He's a good dude.
Yeah, no, definitely a good dude. But yeah, I mean, it's incredible. You can buy a file from someplace like Galactic Armory for $10, $15, $20, and a little bit of filament, $20 worth, maybe like that. A little bit of paint and Bondo and things like that. So $70 maybe, you're into it, and you've got a brand new helmet on your wall.
Half the price of a Black Series helmet.
Yeah. I mean, it's really incredible. And there's just,
and you made it yourself. There's something about making things yourself that means so much more than anything I've ever bought.
Yeah. There's also the downside of that that it's not real, and also you see every imperfection that you don't like about your own work. But it does feel good to put something on the shelf and someone's like, "Oh, where'd you get this one?" You're like, "I made it." And it's always a cool feeling. But Yeah, just again, representation. So the helmets are a fun way to, in a 12 by 12 kind of cube space, get a representation of a character. I've been trying my hardest to not feel compelled to buy the hot toy and the helmet or something of that
to
nature.
get that display going.
Yeah. I've been trying my hardest to kind of pick a lane. I've been trying to go with more organics and things like that when it comes to hot toys and things of that nature, because that's a place where I feel like I don't have a great vendor for to be able to buy aliens and things like that from.
Well, now is that in like 6 scale or what size?
Yeah, that would be like 1/6 scale. But I would love to, and actually I talked to the Galactic Armory about this a little bit, but I would love to see someone out there really doing aliens as 3D print files. He's done a little bit with Grogu and
and Babu Frick. Well, I guess it may not have been, but we don't know that character's particular name from season 3. Maybe it's Babu, maybe it's not. But I know that file just came out. So.
Right. Yeah, I just saw that one. But
we're not at big characters.
Yeah, yet, I look at I would love to do an Admiral Akbar. He's one of my favorite. Admiral Lattice. I don't know. I've got a thing for them.
Lieutenant Beck. While we're at it, let's just knock them all out.
Let's just keep going. So I look at buying like a silicone mask of that for someone like Chris Stevens, who does amazing work, fantastic work. But then I look at my 3D printer. It's like I should be able to build this. So anyone who's listening, watching, if you are into building 3D print files and things of that nature, I would love to support you.
Yeah, and so I'm going to plug, and I know you know him, Joel Hazy from the Spice Runners Lounge. Yeah. He is a gentleman and a scholar, and he's a fantastic builder of 6 scale. I know we're talking the 6 scale, and that's kind of where he lives. But man, if you can dream it, he can build it for you. And his prices are so good. He will destroy Hot Toys anytime. Yeah. So I don't know. It's a route. I couldn't recommend his work anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I could do a whole episode on Joel. I bounced back and forth with him a couple times, and of course we know a lot of the same people, but always impressed with the work. I don't, I think about how long it takes me to do something, and it just seems like every week someone's unboxing some amazing creation that should have taken a mortal, a month or two to make.
Right.
And it seems like he just pumps them out left and right. So
he does, man.
Endlessly talented guy and a very humble dude.
Absolutely, and that's what I love about him, and he's comical, man. He's good people, but no, man, it's collecting. I never realized there were so many people out there who were interested in collecting Star Wars things and displaying them in their home, which is a private place, first off. So you have to even take it a step further for the people like us that are like, well, let's show off some of and don't take that word out of context for those listening. But displaying these things publicly in a very private setting, so it's you take that extra step, which is a gutsy move. It takes a little bit of courage to be willing to show something off that is easily or can easily receive critique, and so it's
and cool and that happens from time to time. I mean, a lot of times I'm unboxing something and I'm realizing partway through that like I don't know absolutely everything about this product that I'm unboxing. I don't necessarily know what every single accessory that this hot toy came with and what the exact designation number is of the blaster and all that stuff. I might know some of them, but I'm not going to know all of them. Luckily, most of the time the comments are pretty kind to me about that stuff, and I try to disclaim that I don't necessarily know at all when it comes to those things. But there's always a little bit of that. But my takeaway from last celebration, Anaheim celebration, was sort of just like my favorite word is unabashed, which is to just sort of be not feel guilty or feel self-conscious about like who you are, and. We all probably grew up as nerds. I was a big nerd, but I was a nerd, and that wasn't always necessarily cool at the time when I was doing it. So seems a little bit more celebrated now than it did then. But my takeaway, at least at Celebration, was that I found a lot of people being very courageous. People were in cosplay, and they were, a lot of times assuming a character that they probably didn't have really that confidence in real life to necessarily walk with that, that stance or something like that. And to just wear their heart on their sleeves. And Celebration, of course, is a safe place to do that. My hope is that they sort of take that into their normal real life as well, and just sort of, like you said, be unabashed about who they are, be willing to like share that stuff, because if they aren't, they're kind of missing out on the experience that you and I are getting. which
It's
is
true, man. It's
to
so
connect with fellow fans and fellow collectors. And Facebook for me at this point is basically how I keep track of all the collecting communities and stuff like that out there. It's primarily that for me now than it is keeping track of who's had their fifth child from high school at this point.
Right, man. I don't even have a real personal Facebook. I just have Black Spire Broadcast, and people message me from my family on this, and they're one and the same.
Yeah, right.
It is funny though. Yeah, I don't have Facebook for the same purpose that many people have Facebook. It's the same thing. I'm a part of all these groups that I know you're a part of as well, and we probably interact with each other there by accident. But there are a ton of collectors. You wouldn't realize how big this community is. It's huge.
Right. And it's always so interesting to go through the pages and look at how people are curating their collection or what they collect. Rico Robot recently has been doing so many of the maquettes that are sort of like pre-production maquettes, which is something that a lot of Star Wars fans aren't going to be interested in because that didn't go on screen or didn't look like that on screen. They don't know who Phil Tippett is, something like that. But I love that there's a company out there that's doing that and finding a large audience to want to buy their products.
But Phil, you'll never be forgotten in my heart.
Oh, that's awesome.
This is my favorite thing I own. And it would never have came off that wall if you didn't say it by name. But
that's amazing.
I love Phil.
That's so cool. But we're thankful that we have people like Tom at Regal Robot to be as crazy as we are about this stuff and see that that interest out there. And basically, I'm sure Tom and his team are basically just making things that they're really interested in, and they're really glad that other people are interested in it too. And that's kind of all of us. You have a podcast because you're interested in Star Wars, and other people listen to it because they're into Star Wars. And I created my channel because I wanted to connect with other collectors, and now I have. So it's
absolutely, man.
It's kind of what we're all chasing.
And I will say, Regal Robot does catch a lot of flack and for things that I don't necessarily agree with pricing and various things like that. And I know I had Gordon Tarpley on, one of the artists that does a lot of work for Tom over there. He did the Rancor, the famous Regal Robot Rancor. But and he said the same thing, that this company is a fantastic company that is really paying attention to the accuracy and putting forth accuracy as front and center in Star Wars, and I think it's really cool that they exist. And I don't personally own any of their products, but obviously I have tons of friends that do. And man, just beautiful things that has taken a niche community, which is Star Wars collecting, and then taking it even a step further with like those maquettes you're talking about and various things that I never would have thought like you could even cast. And here it is, and you can buy it. And some of them are overpriced. I'm not going to lie, but I understand licensing fees are expensive, but some things are very reasonable too.
Yeah, I think Regal Robot's done a good job at offering multiple entry points into their company. So, I love the Chewbacca bust and things like that, but that's a year's worth of collecting budget right there, probably.
Absolutely.
In one piece, which for some people is totally worth it. I get that. But I have a handful of their smaller pieces, some of their wall pieces and things like that. So I like that they offer multiple entry points. You can get into a Regal Robot piece for as little as $25, I think, something like that. And I think they actually run fairly lean, especially on the higher end stuff. I think by the time you factor in the licensing and the massive amount of R&D that they put into it, it's not just they take a look at it and they make something that looks pretty close.
Not.
I mean, it is intense stuff. Accurate. Yeah. So you're paying artists to make it. So, if you are a patron of the arts, you support the arts, it's different than when you buy, a Hasbro Black Series piece, which does have artists working on it, but is a mass produced giant, corporation.
Right. It is definitely not the same thing. That is for sure. No, I am all actually, Tom and I had Tom scheduled on the podcast. I got very sick and I was unable to host him, but we're in talks of getting him back on. So that episode will be coming soon, but
awesome.
No, I do. I love what he's doing. Also you can talk to him. That's the thing. You can't really talk to big wigs of companies, but you can talk to Tom. You can reach out to him, and odds are he'll respond. It's pretty cool.
Tom emails me anytime there's something new coming out, just to give me a heads up. And I don't always buy the stuff, but I'm always happy to promote it because I love what he's doing in the community. Right. It's kind of like, again, with Galactic Armory, I don't buy all the files that he puts out, but I feel like at this point it's kind of like I owe it to the people that have been kind enough to watch my content and follow along, that I share who I think they should do business with, that I think is going to treat them right, creates good products. It's the same way that I try to share, when I find a good deal on a Black Series helmet or something like that from a reputable retailer. It's kind of a small way of giving back, a small way of thanking them for participating in my obsession.
Yeah, because anything that helps push positive traffic, people are going to be obviously grateful for that. And Aaron's one of those dudes too. But my favorite part of the show, and it's a very difficult question to ask because I don't know how to answer it myself. And I'll do a two-parter. What is your favorite Star Wars film or series? I'll do the or. We could break that into two parts.
Right. Okay. Gosh, it's got to be Empire Strikes Back. I was going to see if
everybody's answer.
I know. I was going to see if I could come up with something else, but it would be dishonest.
Okay, but why? Why?
Yeah, so growing up, it was my least favorite film. Of the original three, it was Return of the Jedi was my favorite. A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back. I always thought Empire was like a little slow, kind of lacked that like big action scene. So as a kid, it wasn't my favorite. But you grow up liking film, and then you go to film school, and then you come out the other side of that, and you see the brilliance of the actual story, and the cinematography was never better in a Star Wars film, at least in the original ones. So it's just an amazing story. I mean, it is truly, I think, again, I have rose-tinted glasses on when I think about Star Wars, when I watch Star Wars, but I know that I can put Empire Strikes Back high on a film list, and it should be respected by anyone who really knows and loves film because of the impact of that film, and just some of perhaps the best moment in cinema history. When I met my wife, she hadn't seen Star Wars, so which is both like, oh my gosh, is this going to work out? But also, what an amazing opportunity, right? To be able to be the first time there. So, watching Empire Strikes Back, and then the key moment happens, and I look over, and the jaw drops, and it's like, that's all I needed. Done.
Success. It's done. I got the ring. We're going tomorrow.
Yep. So that was
same story here.
That was a
good
moment.
Thing, man.
Yeah.
Same thing with my wife. Never saw it. I introduced her to it. She's the co-host of the podcast now. So
awesome.
This is actually primarily her office.
Yeah.
And kind of my collection room. But,
right.
Yeah. So it's funny, but it's same, man. Same. I right now, and mine's probably Jedi. I think it's because of the anniversary of Return of the Jedi, and I've watched it a few times recently. Yeah. But Empire is beautiful. I watched it last week. It just it's almost flavor of the week for me sometimes. You know, like today is the 24th anniversary of the release of the Phantom Menace, and I watched the Phantom Menace today. And right now, it might be my favorite. I don't know. It just depends. It just depends. But I agree. As far as a movie that is made as in quality, not necessarily the lore of the Star Wars, but the quality of the movie from somebody like your perspective. If I hear you saying that it could be put up there with the greatest films of all time, then obviously it's probably the best Star Wars film.
Okay, so let's take the same question. Let's remove the original trilogy.
Okay.
What's your answer now?
Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I just love it's so very emotional. Taking myself back to 2005, but it's very emotional watching that downfall. We all know it's going to happen, but it is. Hayden gets a lot of hate from non-Star Wars fans and Star Wars fans alike. Sure. And I love him. It's my era of Star Wars. That's what I grew up seeing in theaters, as you did. And he portrayed that downfall very well. You can see the conflict that we've always heard about from out of Luke's mouth in the OT. I feel the conflict in you. You saw it from the very, very beginning, and I think he did such a good job. But there's something about the dark side. I just love the dark side. I'm a Sith at heart, but don't take that literally. Man, just seeing it in its glory, seeing the lore, seeing how bad Palpatine truly was, how Sidious. I loved that, and that movie could have been 4 hours easily. If there was ever that extended cut you always hear about.
There's a rumored extended cut. Yeah.
If that ever happened, man, oh my gosh. But I think that was fantastic. There were parts that were rushed, obviously, and you could tell they just had to hit that point and move on to the next one. But that's mine. What about you?
Well, that's interesting too, is because it sounds like it's been that way for a while. For me, I was a little bit older when the prequels were coming out. 2005 was Revenge of the Sith, but also the year I graduated high school, so I wasn't quite a kid at that point. So I didn't dislike them, but of course then we had to live through 10 years of people complaining about the prequels. And during that time, I eventually watched the Clone Wars, which I didn't watch when it was new. Watched it afterwards. Was on. Had already watched it I think twice by the time season 7 came out. But that helped so much to recontextualize franchise, that entire era for me.
Yeah.
So that combined with being able to really appreciate the designs and the intent of a lot of the prequel trilogy, that really kind of redeemed it for me. So it's interesting to hear Revenge of the Sith being high ranked, but seemingly has always been pretty high ranked for you. You didn't necessarily have to go through the recontextualization.
No, now obviously I'm a Clone Wars lover. I mean, I have
I see it behind
Clone
you.
Wars all over the place. Yeah, I just love it, man. And I hadn't watched the Clone Wars until the pandemic. I just didn't have time to sit down for that many seasons of a show, and I'd have to rewatch because there'd be so much time. I worked shift work as I was a cop prior to getting hurt. Now I'm retired, so that's why I have all this time to do this now.
Okay.
But I went back and watched it, and man, it just like that lore was already like this big, right? And now it's like enormous. I mean, the book would have like 5,000 pages of lore if you wanted to go into every costume, everything that could have possibly, and I love that. The more content, the merrier. It's kind of what I believe,
Yeah, totally. So I think for me, go ahead.
No. I was about to ask the question that you're about to answer.
So I think for me, it would. God, I hate to say it. I think it's Andor. It's just I hate to say it because it's so fresh. But Andor is like just masterful filmmaking. I mean, it's just like I understand like some people thought it was slow and things like that, but we took so many of the good parts of Rogue One. Again, love Rogue One. I think there are a couple structure issues here and there. I can tell where it was tweaked and there were two directors, even though we don't really talk about that. But I think it's not a surprise. Tony Gilroy being an amazing filmmaker, everything he seems to have worked on, and at least later in his career here, has been great. But I just it completely changed my perspective on what Star Wars could be. I love Mandalorian. I love the fun of Mandalorian, but I also love the serious intrigue of Andor. And for me, those are kind of my guardrails right now. I'm happy with
I like that.
This kind of fun and pulpiness over here. Still lots of lore, lots of giving the fans like big payoffs for having watched Rebels, having watched Clone Wars, stuff like that. But then Andor over here being something that you don't have to have really watched anything else. You're still going to get a fantastic story out of it. It's set in Star Wars, but it's not like holding an Ewok in front of your face. Those guardrails for me, and not that I don't want them to do whatever they want. I think the more that they try things, the better. But anything that falls in between that, I think for me is going to feel really good from now on.
Yeah, and those are very wide guardrails, obviously. I mean, if you can go from like payoffs to a cartoon that most adults aren't going to watch to like I've never seen Star Wars, I just know how to spell the words. Like that's enormous. That kind of sets the stage for whatever they want with the future. But I totally agree with what you said with Andor, because I watched it and I didn't absolutely love it. Now, hearing it from somebody who has a background like you do, and you appreciating the way it was made, and I do agree that Tony Gilroy is a fantastic director. But seeing it from that perspective and thinking back, I do find myself randomly thinking about planets like Ferrix and those details and things like that. Now, overall, I didn't love the show. I did not. I was bored a lot, and that maybe that's I don't know. Sometimes I got to have some wars with my Star Wars. I'm sorry, but the finale was fantastic. But the way it was filmed and the acting was A+. I found the acting to be great. The set making was absolutely beautiful. The story just drug a little bit for me. I didn't know what was going on sometimes, but overall, fantastically made. I can't deny some of the best quality that we've seen since Lucas left, without a doubt.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess like I said, I almost hate to say it because it's just sort of like one of the more recent things on my radar. But I think that's where I am, honestly. Yeah.
No, that's fair.
The only thing I would say is that the lead up to The Force Awakens was some of the most fun time to be a fan.
Because it's been so long, man.
Yeah.
10 years.
Yeah, and it was just like that. That's one of the things I think it doesn't really get talked about enough in, obviously this doesn't really have to do with collecting, but the Star Wars community is the lead up to a new project is sometimes more fun than the actual project.
Right.
There's so much like excitement in that, and there's like you're trying to find that like right balance for you about like what's a spoiler, what's not a spoiler. Like you want to know a lot, but you don't want anything ruined.
You don't want to know anything. Yeah. I want to know it all, but nothing.
Right. You want to kind of a sneak peek of the new trooper, but you don't want to like know when they jump in and things like that. So the lead up to any Star Wars project, whether it ends up paying off or not, is I think it's always a lot of fun.
It's a good time, man. It's a good time. And they've got that mastered, especially with how often they're churning out projects. They know how to market it. And one day, it starts for me. As soon as I know about a series confirmed, I wait till that Instagram account goes live, and I'm like, boop, as soon as I was one of the first 100 followers on the Ahsoka one, because I pay attention for that. I'm like, oh, here we go, and I'm like, subscribe, or follow, whatever.
Absolutely.
But it's good times, and that's one thing about this digital age that may not have been so prevalent back the prequel time. Obviously not the OT. You have access to that 24/7 if you want it, and there's people like us that are taking that content and blasting it out even more for more people to see. So.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine what it would have been like to be a fan, this hardcore of a fan, back when it was so unobtainable.
Right.
You couldn't even just watch the film whenever you wanted to. You didn't have an at-home version of Star Wars. So, I feel very fortunate to be in the time that we're in, with a combination of being able to get series of Star Wars, to get the films, to have access to social media, the good sides of social media, to connect with people like yourself. And, a lot of my collection comes from Etsy and eBay, and not so much like Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, although I keep kind of trying. It just doesn't work for me so well. But, without access to something like eBay, I would have 5% of my collection probably.
Yeah, and eBay is the Wild West, man. So you got to kind of get lucky there, you know? But it is awesome. It is so cool. Now I want to ask you part 2 of that question. Sure. Favorite character? Very difficult to answer, I know.
Yeah. Are we talking any character?
Yeah, you can pick any character. If it's easier, you can break it down by trilogy, you can break it down by series, whatever you got to do.
Recently, and I don't even know if this really counts. This actually sounds like speciest of me. But recently it's been Chewbacca. Over the last couple of years, I don't know, something about that Wookiee has just gotten in my heart. I built this really budget Chewbacca build using some parts from the terrible Ruby's Chewbacca costume, but then upgrading some parts, getting a new mask, and I've stayed in contact with the mask maker, and I've got his old suit now. So there's just something about that big furry Wookiee. I like that Wookiee.
Dude, it's Chewy, man. It's always gonna. I actually think, I'll bring it up real quick. Is this it? Out of curiosity. Do pause for dramatic effect. I love it. Is this guy it?
Yep, that's it. So I've got a new suit now that'll match that fur a little bit better. But and you can watch. I think it was a 3 or 4 film series on me building that, including a part where my wife wraps me up in duct tape to make a duct tape mannequin to kind of support it all.
That's so cool.
You can see me wrapped up in duct tape like a mummy if you find that video. But
I love it.
Chewbacca, probably my main man right now. But I do love things I love Admiral Akbar. I think he's such a fun kind of side character, secondary character. Max Rebo makes me smile. Just a little blue elephant dude.
A very underrated character.
Yeah, who's pretty mischievous. If you at least from the old EU, about kind of selling out his bandmates and things like that. So I would say those are kind of my main guys. Now growing up, I'm the boring answer of Luke Skywalker. I know the cool answer is to say Han Solo. Everyone likes to act.
That's the slightly greaser answer.
Everyone likes to act like they were 7 years old and really into being the cool suave guy and not wanting to be the Jedi with the lightsaber.
Right,
I mean, I think a lot of people are kind of retconning their own history there.
Let's be honest.
Yeah. But I just have really fond memories of my Hasbro green Return of the Jedi lightsaber. That was my main one. So I just wanted to be a Jedi.
Dude, that's awesome. That's so cool. And I'm the same way with that. So mine kind of, obviously I grew up post that era. I was born in 93, you were born in 87. So it's about a 6-year difference, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for Star Wars, it is, because I vividly recall seeing the Phantom Menace in theaters, and I had Qui-Gon's hilt. That cheap little, it wasn't even probably Hasbro. I don't know who made it, but so to answer that today, so I'm a up and coming artist. I just started drawing, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and so Qui-Gon's been the flavor of the week, but I did this guy. I don't know if it saw it, but
it's awesome.
Yeah, it's really hard to do this, but Qui-Gon's probably my guy right now. And I watched the Phantom Menace today, but there's just something about the Clone Wars, as we discussed, Clone Wars. Qui-Gon was so much more important to Star Wars than we realize, you know, with that understanding of the cosmic force and things that, you know, diehard OTers are going to never want to listen to. But it's all important because I do think it is symbiotic, the whole idea of the cosmic force and the living force. But it's cool. Yeah. So Qui-Gon is mine. But
I think he would be a fantastic choice for the next season of Tales of the Jedi.
Gosh, yes, I hope so.
I think there's a lot of interest in Qui-Gon, and I think a lot of us want to know more. I know he's shown up in a couple books here and there with some Obi-Wan things, but I think he would be fantastic to do 3 episodes at least.
I would love it, man.
Tales of the Jedi.
He's so important, especially that arc with Yoda, where he's learning about how to manifest himself after death through the Force, and it's Qui-Gon. It's Qui-Gon that teaches him. So
right.
I don't know.
Yeah, and such an interesting perspective. You know, we know that Grey Jedi isn't really something that Lucasfilm has warmed up to the idea of, and you can't really say Qui-Gon was a great Jedi or anything like that. No. But you know, he, you know, in a lot of ways, the prequels are smarter than maybe they ended up being executed as.
Yes.
The ideas in the prequels, but like, you know, he represented the.
He knew that the path wasn't necessarily correct.
The non-dogma of it. Yeah.
Like if this is the path, he's like over here doing he's on it, but it's like a little off.
Right.
Because he knew, you know.
And it wasn't necessarily like he's saying like you have to do this, but in that, like, you know, if we all go the exact same direction and don't explore multiple options and explore the Force and in ways of you know, interacting with the Force more fully, then we are weakening ourselves, which ultimately is what the downside of the Jedi were in that era.
That's right, man. That is right. Well, brother, I appreciate you coming on, man. Where can everybody find you?
So primarily, I have a YouTube channel, so Star Wars Collected on YouTube. Also on Instagram at Star Wars Collected. That's a fun place to kind of interact more directly. I try to put up polls and funny questions and memes, and anytime I find a good deal on something, then I try to share that on there too, because I know I'm always hunting for a good deal. But that's primarily it. Otherwise, you're going to find me on a lot of Facebook groups, you know, sharing content, interacting. If you're sharing stuff, I'm probably liking it. I try to be as generous as I can with the collecting community.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, I know you were a good steward of the brand, and you're always fun to talk to. But I like I said, man, seriously, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It is an honor and a pleasure,
man. No, this was awesome.
Absolutely, man.
Happy to do it.
Well, I will share all those links.
When I get this all set up and it's all looking good again, I'll come back. And
dude, we'll do it again.
We'll do an actual full tour of the collection.
Yeah,
you guys can see all the stuff that I've added, you know, in the last year and a half or so since those photos that we were sharing earlier were up, and you'll see what I did with the space, because this is a big room down here. There's probably twice as much space, maybe 3 times as much space as what there was before, and I can't wait to show it to everyone.
That's awesome, man. Well, I can't wait to see it either, man. So, but as always, may the Force be with you always. And that is where I ended. I edited everything else out, but
cut.
Yeah, no, seriously, man. I appreciate it. That was fun. Fun.
Thanks, David, man.
I aim for an hour. That's always my target.
Cool.
I've learned through analytics that an hour is kind of the sweet spot.
Yeah. I need to get better at my timing.
Well, that's why I do the podcast. It got hard, man, because this is my 31st show, I think. But my early shows, I had a script in front of me, and I'd word for word them, and then it went to like kind of a skeleton of like framework, and now that's why I go organic, man. I watch the time. I know about how long this type of topic is going to take, and you know, I like to mix the point of why I chose you as a guest with the lore of talking Star Wars, because I love getting other people's opinions on things. And yours is refreshing, because it's not just like we can bash a show back and forth. Like, you're going to be positive, and if I want to be negative, and I like that. It's good. You got to have that variance. But no, man, awesome. I seriously appreciate you doing it, man.
Yeah, happy to. I'm glad we got the technology working here. I don't know.
Yeah, dude, I don't know.
Actually, hold on. Let's try this real quick. So I'm going to put myself on focus, which is like do not disturb. And is it still working?
Yeah. I can hear you.
Oh, no idea.
I don't know. Whatever. We figured it out. I was nervous. I was like, man, I don't want to have to.
That would have been a bummer.
Pick another date. That would suck.
Yeah,
because I have you slotted. Oh, that's what I was going to tell you. I'm releasing. What is today? The 18th, I think.
Yeah, 18th.
I am the 24th. So Wednesday, the 24th. So release on Wednesdays. So
all right.
That'll
I'll make a note right here.
Cool.
And I'll make sure to promote the hell out of it.
Yeah, bro. I appreciate it. And one tool I've started using, and I know not everybody may be a fan of it, and you don't have to. There's no pressure, but I like to, through the Instagram way, that's my primary means of socialing, if you will. I do the collaborator tool.
Heck yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar. I love doing that. 50-50 if people want to do it. You know, a lot of people tell me they will, and then they don't, and I just never bring it up again because I don't care. Sure. But I always like to up front be like, hey man, I love doing that. Get it out to as many people. Obviously, it's good for both of us. For
sure.
But just like to throw it out there that's the tool I love using.
I'm a big fan. I'm a creative director in real life, and I've got like a team of 20 or so like social media people, and I'm constantly trying to tell them like collaborate with one another. Like it just rises all boats.
Everybody,
like, just
it
do
helps
it.
everybody,
It's good.
man.
Yeah,
it really does. And I've met so many cool people just through that tool. That's like third hand random person that is one of your followers that I become best friends with somehow.
Exactly.
It's weird how that works. But So 24th, and where do you live, man, or whereabouts?
Sure, Central Ohio, Columbus.
Oh, you're a long ways away. Well, next time,
same time zone.
Yeah, well, that's at least good. Because sometimes I get California people. That's why the Spice Runners Lounge is so hard, because we bleed it to after midnight. But if you're in Florida, I live in Orlando, and if you ever hit up Galaxy's Edge, let me know. I'd love to meet you in person, head to Oga's or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I've been to Anaheim, but I haven't been to that one.
Well,
I've got 2 dealerships down in Naples, so I'm usually down in Naples. Couple like once a year or something like that, but haven't made the trip as much as I keep thinking about. Made the trip from Naples to Orlando. They're just not quite.
There's literally a ton of people that through especially the Spice Runners Lounge that we're all right here, so we'd love to get together with you for sure. I'm sure they already told you that, but
I gotta make a trip down there sometime.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate it, man. I'll be in touch. I'll let you know.
Cool. Good luck weathering that storm.
Man. Yes, thank you. You have a good night, man. Thank you so much.
You too. See you later.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you everybody for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe wherever you're listening. Make sure you leave a review. It helps grow the channel. Thank our sponsors and thank Laser Sabers. Use code BlackSpire at checkout. Save 5% off your next custom lightsaber. And GalacticArmor.net. If you're in the market for some 3D custom printed armor, head over there. Use code BlackSpire. Save 10% at checkout. Seriously, thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate it.